Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. First order of business is roll call.
I don't have my list, and I'll mess up names as I normally do.
Well, let's see.
No, I won't forget.
Ms. Parker,
Here.
Ms. Kinzer, Ms. Hopkins. Okay, I'm looking. Huh?
See?
Mr. Fulbright,
Here.
Mr. Moore,
Present.
Mr. Sims,
Here.
Mr. Beaver. I'm just going by the number of it. Mr. Howell,
Here.
Ms. Morency, and Mr. Dudley. So we are only two people absent. We have a quorum ready to go, except for Mr. Atkinson, who is, what district are you, fifth?
No.
Sixth. I don't know the numbers, I just know them.
Not as easy when you get behind.
Wait a minute, I had it. All right, the first order of business is approve the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Mr. Beaver, made the motion, Mr. Moore seconded the motion. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. Then the next order of business is budget amendments. Oh, do you want us to vote? Do y'all have your computers up? Okay. Okay.
You did want it, yes, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess, yes. Okay. All right, we have budget amendments. Mr. Lacona, you are up.
All right. Check.
I don't know that you have, I think if we should entertain questions, then do we need a motion first or discussion first? Check.
Yeah, I think so.
I think if there are any, let's have questions first.
Check. Hey, we got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll entertain any questions. These are all of our year-end budget cleanup. So you can see there's 22 amendments there, and you know, we're moving monies around. We do end up taking money from fund balance because this is based on projections, because we have our 2 payrolls still coming up that we run, and also based off of revenue projections with sales tax as well. Now, I will say at this point in time, we are sitting at a surplus, and sales tax came in better than expected, and things are looking very good. I think overall this year, we will come in at a surplus, and we will be able to turn around and put that money into our budget and spend it on what the board and staff deems appropriate. Another follow-up is this takes $1.2 million out of fund balance, but this is just budget. This is just projection. If we underestimate in some of these line items, we could end up getting an audit finding, and so that's why we're more conservative than progressive on these. So I'll answer any questions.
Did you want to tell us about how much you took out of fund balance?
I think 1.2 million.
I mean, I'll be honest, I wouldn't mind kind of going through all these, starting in order.
Okay, so we're going to pull them up in order, and then if any of you have questions about it, we'll let you ask them. Anything on the first one that?
Oh, yeah, I have questions. I'll
Okay.
try to keep it brief, to be honest. So just basic question here, I know we're digging in. What was the discrepancy on the received amount and the total amount, and then the handwritten notes on there?
You can go.
And I'm not looking for like just
So
a basic
This
explanation.
one's actually not a cleanup one. This is just something that got approved as part of regular business at the last meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And because it is for this fiscal year, it got put on this meeting instead of going to the board meeting because the revenue was received in this year. It's just one of those that was at the work session that was approved this month. So it's at the cleanup meeting because it is one of the budget amendments that goes back into revenue. And let's look at the attachment that's with it.
Are we looking at BA 9145?
Correct.
Okay.
This is just items, if you look at the attachment, that was sold on Gov Deals by the maintenance department and transportation. So it's just the revenue that they earned, and they're putting it back
No, I was looking at the total amount received was 20,000, then it dropped down, and when the check was written, it was less. Is that the fee coming out of that, or what?
Oh, correct, yes.
Okay.
GovDeals keeps the fees.
All right.
I wasn't looking at the attachment, I was just looking at the debit
Sorry.
and the credit.
That's what happens when you give me attachments. I start reading them. Thank you.
There should usually be an attachment for our GovDeals.
Okay, the next one is budget, 9146, adjusting the line item for regular instruction. Is there a question or comment about that one? None? Then we'll move on. Oh, excuse me, are we? Yes.
Okay, I guess I will go over,
All right.
I'll ask a question about this one, 'cause this one's the one taking out from fund balance. One question I've got is, how does this affect us with the budget that we've just done? 'Cause there's a lot going on in this particular one and taking things from it. Do you have any projections for the next, for the budget that we just approved,
Yep.
since we based it off of this?
So, we went to a last year's funding level, which had attrition, $800,000 of staff attrition built into it. You can see that we're adding the most money to the teacher's line item, and also our medical insurance line item is largely affected, and this is because of attrition accounted for less positions. Now, the cuts that were made, that accounted for spending more money on textbooks, not what we were already underfunded for. So in this upcoming budget, we are basically pre-planned to come up short. And I think that what we might think about, or what you all might think about as a school board, is taking any surplus that we have from this year and trying to offset that. What we try to do every time we have a department that has a line item that goes over budget is, first of all, look inside that department's budget and find out where they didn't go over budget and try to, attack those line items first and use that to offset it. Then if you run out, look at any revenues that went over projections, so you can see where we take from some revenues to offset that first. We try everything we can, first of all, to not touch fund balance. And so you can see that in these revenue line items, we increase those, including current property tax budgets, to offset that to where the fund balance impact is lower than it could be. So for next year, yeah, we are set up to blow these lines.
To have a $2 million deficit, essentially. That's what
I-
this particular amendment is for.
We didn't cut any positions last year, and even though that was for the 1.5 in books, the longer we have positions and vacancies, and as this evolves with COVID-19, there's going to be a lot that changes. But if it's a normal school year, I would say, yeah, we're short, and I would say at least $1 million,
Okay. And I know
pending
this is-
any attrition.
And I know this isn't necessarily your responsibility, but from a, we talked about attrition. Was anybody monitoring attrition during the year, or saying, hey, we're not gonna meet our $800,000 number, and
Yeah.
adjusting their spending accordingly? Were there any conversations that occurred or centered around that?
I spoke about it at multiple board meetings.
Right, I know this isn't you, I'm
and
talking
in
about
executive
oversight
staff.
from
Yeah,
the people that we've paid
previously.
6 figures,
And that was a conversation that came up in executive, that we were behind on our numbers. So it's up to, I said this last time, it takes action to make a budget come to reality. If you don't do it, then you don't you don't save any money.
Well, is there any PPE money, or, from COVID money that covers any of this? 'Cause I know we had
We don't have any revenue received
from any of that.
We don't get anything until the next fiscal year.
We had a follow-up call last week with FEMA to know everything that we need to submit to them, and so we're working on submitting some stuff, but FEMA keeps changing the rules on us a little bit too right now.
So we basically paid everybody with the understanding that we were going to be paying out a deficit, essentially.
Yeah, unless
That's
positions
correct.
would have been cut, then that's that's the only way
Yeah.
that we wanna pay somebody.
Or more turnover occurred, because if you budget to have a certain amount of turnover and the people stay,
Right.
then that's what ends up happening.
I would say we probably haven't, we probably haven't had a lot of attrition till the end of the May contract, when everybody who was retiring or leaving announced that they were leaving.
Right.
So, in that part of it, you'll see a big hit on the Board of Education account.
Mhm.
We have pulled about $400,000 out of the fund balance for that, because all the people who get paid outs for sick and vacation time come out of that line. So we had about a lot of payouts this year. Since our policy has no cap on sick time, so we can pay out anywhere between $20,000 when somebody leaves who's been with the district 30 years.
Will somebody put that on the July work session so we can talk about that?
Yeah, we can, maybe Scott's office would
You talk about
discuss
the
that.
payout for retirees.
The payouts for retirees having,
Part of
Nothing
the,
yet.
Yeah.
that's part of the memorandum of understanding, so you know that.
yeah, I don't know what all was part of the memorandum, but that's just the
Mhm.
policy, is there's no cap. So if a teacher's been with the district 20 years, 30 years, depending on how many days they've earned, when we pay out, the biggest check I think I've seen has been $20,000.
I thought it was 200 days was a cap.
There is no
Not
cap on
anymore,
sick,
when I retired.
and it's paid out at $50 a day.
Right.
How do we have surplus for textbooks when we had the discussion about, when we've had this discussion about textbooks? I know it's not.
That's a simple question to answer, but
What we,
we didn't spend the money that was allotted for textbooks.
I know there's a lot of books that are in, I know we have a lot of books that are on order and on back order, because when the tornado hit Nashville, I know we've got some purchase orders that we're carrying on June 30th this year, because the librarians or the teachers or the schools that ordered books, they ordered them on their regular time, I think, or whenever the funding was available to them, because I think it was almost December or January by the time we approved funding. And when the things got ordered and a warehouse got hit, this is the first time that we're actually accommodating purchase orders to be carried into next year, because we have numerous amounts that's on back orders now. So I'm not sure.
Shipping is heavily impacted as well. Anything that comes from anywhere pretty much outside of Tennessee is going through multiple scanning processes to see if there's any trace of, of where that book has been, if it could be contaminated, but.
And just a general question about this process. I mean, obviously you guys are working on the budget amendment, but you're working on it in conjunction with the department, right? And so the department head for this particular budget's not here, correct?
These are cleanup, so the only ones that are actually, we reached out to the departments and kind of were like, hey, are you okay with this? But for the most part, only people who are really sped or
Title.
voluntary PK and stuff, they're the ones, because we can't touch theirs, even though they're GP money, we don't touch it, because they have to have certain amounts shown for June 30th balances. Everything else is up to our discretion, so the emails were sent out first week of June that go ahead and open any purchase orders that you need for funding as of right now. If you don't use those fundings, we will use them for cleanup. And as far as cleanup goes, it's just moving the lines around so each line has enough money. Now, when these employees who have gone in and opened the purchase, for example, the books, or any of the money that was appropriated for the athletic fields, or the computers and stuff, those line items are monitored by us. So even if we're touching those lines right now, you'll probably see me bring back budget amendments in July, once the budget comes back, to give this funding back to the line items that were appropriated by the board if they didn't expend that money. I hope that makes sense. It's a big circle.
Also, if anything, at the object code level, if it's payroll, if it's over by $10, it's going to be our office that gets a finding.
$2.
$2, sorry. It's not even 10, it's $2.
I think it's 2.
It used to be 10. Anyways, so we do take a lot of this into our own hands, especially because it will come back on our office if we don't budget adequately and do our jobs.
Right, but as far as being able to answer why 12,000 wasn't spent in textbooks, that's really not your domain, should
No.
say.
No.
Okay.
And they may have,
I'm trying to be fair about
know
this,
that we
but
did
I'm
get a
also
question.
trying to for all, it's a $2 million budget amendment.
Yep.
And that's pretty poor oversight at some point. And I'm not saying I'm not putting that on you guys at all, but with everything that we've had that's gone on this year and all this uncertainty and stuff, to see a $2 million budget amendment and the conversations that we've had about textbooks, and I don't understand why certain people are, checked out and have been for a while, so I'll just leave it at that.
The one last thing is, I would say, is that we do have a purchasing process that was put in place before I took over the school's finance department, and that was that they would actually cut off all POs April 15th for instruction. I thought that was ludicrous. That was way too early. There's still time to buy stuff, there's still time to get instruction. So what we did is we extended it to May 15th, and May 15th, you get to order, you get to, get things in, but I feel like even going later than May 15th might be useless because honestly, school lets out May 26th or May 22nd, depends on the year. So we extended it to May 15th, and then for operations week, that deadline used to be always in line with instruction. Well, we moved that to June 8th this year so that people could get into buildings. This was the perfect time to clean and fix stuff. But anyways, we're trying to be as accommodating as possible with approving purchases. And if an emergency purchase happens, no matter what time it is, what day it is, we'll make justification for that and get that done as well.
More.
All right. I actually appreciate you guys for going through that because it explains a lot to understand that you guys are just kind of cleaning up after the fact. So that's helpful to do that. And I was going to get into some of this later on that, but this was one of the concerns I had when we went into the whole discussions about our budget. When we started to talk about the fact that we would only have, and again, this is really not you guys I'm talking to people that aren't here. So the concern that I had all along was when we start talking about, well, let's just do the same number as last year. And I never understood why that translated into, let's just take last year's budget and roll it over again. It seemed like frankly, the lazy and easy way to do this, because we had these discussions last year that we were going to be short on payroll, that we would have a number, and I don't remember it being this large, but we knew we were talking at least like $800,000 short. And it was frustrating to me that no one took the time to say, well, sure, we're only going to be allotted that 103 number, the same one as last year, but that doesn't mean we have to spend it that was just, again, the easy way out, in my opinion. And that was very frustrating. It's frustrating to me as a board member. I'm not sure about, I see some other heads shaking, so I would hope that as we move forward, and again, I'm talking in general here, and to other people that are in the room, that as we move forward, that if that's the case, that we actually have some better discussions, because again, it never made sense to me that just because we had the same number, we just rolled the same budget forward. It seemed very lazy. It seemed like it just, because we had known issues that we discussed at length last year during the budget process, such as this one, that we really should have taken, somebody could have taken a few minutes and had to think. Because here's the frustrating thing for me, as we, as staff, and I know the coronavirus hit things and changed it, but we had teachers that were saying, hey, we should be getting raises, we should be getting other things. This is an important part of this discussion when we start talking about that we're actually short on payroll. And I think that should be part of these discussions when we talk about why maybe we can't do things, because we're having to move $2 million around from other line items just to cover the basics, is what I would say. So, again, as a board member, I would hope as we look at this next time around, it's a little late in the game for this year, but it's just very disappointing that that's where we're at, that no one took the time to really dig into that total budget number, go ahead and move some of these things around and address them, at least in some way, try to address them.
And as of right now, I can tell you that next year's budget, we're going to be short by about $400,000 in medical insurance if we don't make an amendment. The cost of it went up 2%. They're going to give us, luckily our enrollment happens in the middle of the year, so
Sure.
it's 1%, but we left it the same.
And that's I'm sorry to jump back on that. That's an important thing that I talked with several teachers about. As we understand, I know it's hard to understand that that's a thing, but that's something the school district covered, was what would have been an increase, a decrease in your paycheck, let's just put it that way. That's what this would have been if the district hadn't decided, and by the district I mean all the taxpayers of Murray County, took on that extra cost and said, we're not going to pass that on to the employees. And I think that's, again, an important thing we should be discussing with our employees so everybody knows where we're at when we have these budget discussions. I know it's hard to sell anybody that, but, what was the percentage of increase on that this year? It was at 2%?
2%.
Okay. Again, that shows up on a paycheck. It really does. And I think, again, the employees need to be full disclosure with what we're dealing with here. Everybody needs to understand that's something the district took on and did not pass on to the employees.
Ms. Parker?
I don't know if y'all will be able to answer this one, 'cause again, I know this is not your domain, but I remember during one of our Zoom meetings when we talked about doing the second group of packets, and I'm assuming it's gonna be under regular instruction, that we paid out, additional funds to teachers to produce packets. Is that included? I mean, I know we didn't have that budgeted, and I know it didn't reach the $10,000 threshold we were told at the time, so we did not have to approve it, but is it showing up here?
So something I would say going forward is anytime, regardless of whether it's $10,000 or not, when you are going to pay additional salaries that you had not planned on paying for, that's like almost like hiring a position you haven't budgeted for. And I think that should you still have to do a budget amendment as that happens, because that is cost nobody planned for at the beginning of the year. And I think a budget amendment should have been recommended at that time, which I'm recommending it now. Jake and I had talked about it before the meeting that, hey, this should be a budget amendment. And but since it was under 10,000 and you know, he was going to say it would be under 10,000, and as far as I know right now it was under 10,000, but since you can see clearly in this budget amendment that salary lines were gone over in other ways, I mean, it's known that it was not accounted for. Now, I will say, I had to sign every stipend, and we did the math, and it was under $10,000. So, that's the information I have, and yes, it was covered in this budget amendment as cleanup because it wasn't done on the front end, so.
Okay. So with that being said, I made the statement at the time that we had that discussion that I would not approve that budget amendment. So if I don't approve this $2 million budget amendment, then we're pretty much just asking for an audit finding, correct?
Yes.
Do y'all see the problem?
And my office would get it, actually, so.
Well,
But, you know, not that that should matter whose office gets it, but me doing my job, I don't want it. I don't want
and I
the
don't
audit
want
finding,
you to
'cause I'm
have it.
trying.
I know you're trying, but you see where I'm coming from. And it's a slippery slope for us, because at the same time, it's asking for forgiveness, not asking for permission, and our role is permission, not forgiveness. And I know that I don't want it to reflect on y'all, but, you know, the other people that made those decisions and are not sitting at this table and are probably handing out diplomas right now, those are the people that should be accountable. And they're not. And that actually probably ultimately reflects on this board, but I am so tired of it. And I'm not going to approve budget amendments that I said I wasn't going to approve. I understand this is a unique circumstance, so I probably will do it in this instance, but I try to have my principles, and I was very clear about this, and I really have no idea why we paid teachers extra money when they were paid a salary. No idea. And that was poor management, and I hope that gets included in the addendum to the Daily Herald article that people submit when they're responsible for this particular budget amendment.
Ms. Kinzer, can I go real quick?
Yes, please.
I know Doug's not gonna say this because he just doesn't say what he actually said when that was brought up. That's exactly what he said, because our whole office worked all through COVID, and that was stated, like, why are we doing this? So his pure opinion was, we shouldn't do this, and the next thing we know, we have to pay stipends.
I am gonna say something. I lost it that day because the comment was made in executive to do this. No, we've got to pay them. And meanwhile, you had support staff in offices working every single day for Murray County Public Schools at their same rate, no hazard pay. They said, we're going to get a lawsuit if we don't pay them. No, you're going to get a lawsuit because you paid somebody to do something somebody else was already doing for free, and they didn't get it. So it wasn't equal across the board. And but yeah, I was pretty hot about that. But Yeah, if a change like that comes and you've got employees already in the building physically every day, not getting hazard pay or a stipend to do their job, and then you go and you pay another group of employees that work for the same employer, I think it's very risky. It's not good fiscal management, and it's taxpayer dollars you're talking about, so.
Any more on 9146? Then let's go to 9147. Any questions or comments about that one?
Can I say something real
Sure,
quick?
please.
So I just want you all to know, like, the way the calculations were done. Some of these numbers, even though it's a $2 million budget amendment, that doesn't mean we're spending actually $2 million in the next two payrolls. When we did this, we hadn't ran the June 30th payroll yet. As of right now, it's ran, and it's about $2.6 million with benefits and everything. Or not benefits, Social Security, Medicare, and taxes. Just salary plus that, and any stipends of bus drivers all included. So just keeping that in mind, that's about what our payroll runs, between $2 to $3 million. So our estimates are based off of taking what we have spent in the last 8 to 10 months and estimating the next three payrolls. We're trying to estimate higher because, like we said, if we get it even $2 over budget, we get a finding. So some of these numbers, even if it's saying $2 million, we don't know what we're actually going to end up spending by the time we get done. We hope it's going to be a lot less than what these amendments are actually showing, because like we were saying, we're trying to cover our butt so that way we don't get a finding.
I'm going to move on to 9148, which is coaching stipends. Yeah. I mean, wasn't that a pretty big amount from fund balance? I cannot read this. Okay. Once again, fund balance is used. Any questions, comments on that? Excuse me, Ms. Parker, I wasn't looking.
I just turned on my light. I'm asking this again more in a proactive manner for coaching supplements. If we don't have sports in the fall, are we still going to pay out supplements that are in our budget?
That's a good question. Something we took guidance from the state the first time around in other districts on decision making when it came to who are we going to pay and why are we going to pay them. And the coaching stipends came up, and the thing is we divvy out that amount quarterly based on a full year. So that's you have some people that fully coach their entire season of their sport, and then you've got some that never finished their season, and so, but you at least had everybody coach something.
Mm-hmm.
But we haven't received any guidance of whether or not we should from the state or anybody else yet, and quite frankly, we aren't sure if sports are going to be a thing, and so I would have to err on the side of we're not having sports, there's nothing to coach. But we haven't been given guidance if sports is going to be on or off yet, so.
Well, I will just say, just to throw that out there for right now, and I'm not advocating one way or the other. Hopefully there will be sports and there will be a need to pay coaching stipends, but I do think we've got to have conversations with coaches in advance so they're not surprised by that. People budget accordingly. And then I also hope that, and again, this isn't your area, but I'm just stating it so other people might hear it, that there are clear expectations for what is needed for coaches in order to collect their stipend each quarter. Just because if a football coach is responsible for making sure that the field is mowed and that field's not being mowed in April, then, we need to have a conversation about that. So I know some things may be done in, just during the season, but some people have obligations that stretch throughout, I believe. So I just hope that we have clear expectations set out on that and have that reflected.
Mr. Moore.
I apologize that this is the Kristen and David show tonight. I And I agree. I think we need to absolutely have some, again, a point of frustration for me. I feel like these are some of the things that should have been discussed over the summer among administrative staff, because we're gonna, Governor Lee just put another executive order today. It is looking more and more likely there's gonna be some changes. It's not gonna be back to normal. As a district, knowing that we're looking at all the revenues looked good so far, we're gonna be impacted. We can't operate as normal, especially if things are not being done. So I think from top to bottom, there needs to be discussions on what's actually being done, what's taking place, what can we afford to pay out on those things. This goes back to the stipends, as far as I'm concerned, about what are the expectations for staff at all levels, from stipends, everything else. And again, not just what can we afford, but like, as you said, Chris, and I think that's very important, that we don't surprise people. That's what I don't want to happen. It's bad enough if we say, hey, we can't give you this amount of money because these things weren't done. That's bad enough. But I know a lot of people rely on these things. It's an expectation they're going to have. So the sooner we as a district can have those internal discussions and decide what this looks like, the more fair that is for our employees. I mean, to be blunt, it really needs to be discussed at length. And this is part of the other thing that again, a point of frustration for me. All of these, when we spend a lot of time talking about the draft plan and other things about masks and everything else, those weren't the issues that worry me as much as anything else. That's the surface level stuff. That's easy to address one way or another. These kind of things, digging into how the operations work, from the building level on up to central office level, are really where the tough stuff has to be decided. The other stuff we can figure out in an afternoon, let's be honest. These hard things are the ones that catch us off guard, and they're going to be unfair to employees when they happen, especially if we don't communicate well, and frankly, we have a history of not communicating well on some of these kind of payroll issues, and I don't want that. So I would hope that central office staff, again, I feel like I'm talking to nobody, would make sure that these things are being talked about, and really at depth. I'm talking digging into the weeds. This is one area you need to get into the weeds on, so.
And you have department heads, you have an athletic director for the county. That needs to be something that he discusses with us, presents a plan to, and that the coaches know what the situation is. If it works right, then everybody down the line, but it hasn't worked right in a long time. So here we are, hopefully it will, and I think that's something that we need to put on the work session. That needs to be, so Chris Pointer can be here, we can discuss it, how we do that. Did you have something?
I have a meeting scheduled with Chris Mr. Pointer, to go over this next week, and also a meeting scheduled with Mr. Hickman on July 8th, and I think we could probably fit it in there.
All right, then we're going to move to 9149, which is line items over budget in the health services. Any questions or comments about that? Okay, 9150 is over budget in other student support. Any questions or comment on that one? Okay. So, we had an all-day meeting a few weeks ago with HR about the hiring life cycle, the employee life cycle. One of the things that we want to make sure that we do on the HR side and on the director side is that positions that were not considered in the original budget, if it wasn't considered in the original budget, it needs to come here before it's hired, because you don't have the budget to hire that position unless you and if you're coming to hire a different position that you don't have budget in, then you need to move money from a different position line item to the position you're actually going to hire. And I think that can help with some of these budget amendments needing to be done at the end of the year, because then if the superintendent so wishes, asks for a job that doesn't have budget, that HR department works for that superintendent, posts the job, hires the job's in there working, start paying it out of a different line item. We can kind of catch some of these things on the front end and make sure that a position's funded. and that unnecessary positions aren't hired. I'm not saying that that's something that happened, but I'm saying that that's something we talked about in order to make sure that we don't have to consistently do position budget amendments at the end of every single year. And that could even mean with the quantity of positions. We talked about FTEs so that you can see how many full-time equivalent positions you have from year to year. And if that number increased, but you've got the same payroll budget, you're paying a larger amount of people with the same budget. So that doesn't add up. You're not gonna have enough money. So that's just a point I wanted to make and bring up, that we're trying to have protocols in place before a position gets posted, hired, and put in the classroom or in their position.
I'm digesting that as you say it. I mean, we fund teaching positions that are there. Any new position should really come to the board, shouldn't it? I mean, you know, we ask every year in the budget, are there any new positions in here? And we're usually told no. So if somebody just unilaterally decides they want a position, they'd have to come to us, wouldn't they?
That's correct, and even if you've got 1,000 positions of teachers and you ask for 1,001.
Yes. Okay.
It's green, it was, oh, now it's red.
You've got it.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm ready for 9151. Excuse me, Ms. Parker, go ahead.
So in this particular budget amendment, did we add guidance counselors to schools?
I don't think that we did, no. But that's this is what made me think about what we talked about with the HR department.
So did we just budget incorrectly for our guidance counselors? Like, I'm trying to figure out how $138,000 was, like...
You ready, Shifra?
So, the 123 line is actually your monthly guidance counselor, so this is the estimate again to pay him for 3 more payrolls. It is under budgeted, so we're putting more, not saying we are gonna probably use the whole 138, but as of right now, let's see.
Is this like an extra, like, month that some of the guidance counselors get to, like, work over the summer to do transcripts and do schedules and things like that?
Yes, the line
But that's
item
not what this is?
the line item 123 is the monthly one,
Okay.
and the line item 189 in the same budget is where the stipends are getting paid out of. So anything extra that they do, or any, I think trainings or something that they do that come out of the 189 line, and the rest of them are coming out of 123. Now, the goal that we have, and this is where our office wants to be with the HR office, is to have a shared roster between our office and their office, not a roster that we download from Skyward, a roster that's a live document that we know that we can look at and say, as changes happen in each department, GL, salaries, benefits, they are in that spreadsheet between our office and their office. We haven't reached there yet, and HR has had a lot of turnover, because the document would be originated in that office, and then we would be the ones making sure the GLs is getting put in there. So that's our goal, so that way when you say who's getting paid out of this line, we wanna be able to not have to dig through the actual Skyward software or Alaview and stuff and tell you what's going on. We wanna be able to say, this is who gets paid out of this budget, exactly to the penny.
Because what happens is, sometimes, I mean, we found last week one of the HR employees was being paid out of operations, out of Eric Perriman's budget. So to prevent these issues, we've gotta put things in place with the HR department and keep those rosters, and when they replace, they put the correct account code, or the correct account code is hand entered, to make sure. And what ends up happening, I can't remember 100%, but I think that guidance personnel, correct me if I'm wrong, Shifra, but it was being paid out of the wrong line item, and we did a journal entry and moved it, and then we had to bring budget in for that.
This is actually, the
Yeah.
3 positions that we cut this year, the FRC, they were getting paid out of here. So that was originally 6 funded positions from the state, cut down to 3 directors. We were still paying 6 positions. So we've cut those 3 positions this year, because they were not being funded by the state, and the district years ago picked up those positions, but nobody really knew where they got budgeted.
And this is where they got budgeted?
Yes, they were getting paid out of that line originally. That's 3 guidance counselors, about $30,000 each. a year.
I guess my question is, like, who during the year, not y'all, but who during the year is, like, over, I mean, we pay for a supervisor for counseling. Like, are they looking at this department, or is that
As far as
over
the
somebody
FRC clerks goes, it's one of those that has flip-flopped between title to when it was funded by the state to Dr. Woodard's office to Carl's office. So it's like, it got to the point where I was like, we're paying 3 FRC clerks out of this budget, and Mr. Lang was like, I didn't budget for those people. All clerks usually get paid from the schools, he stated. And so we took them out of there and put them where the grant is. However, this is where they were getting paid out for most of the year. And now they're cut for next year, so hopefully we won't have this issue next year, because really the grant is only giving us about $100,000 to pay 3 directors. We were paying 3 directors and 3 clerks. And
Yeah.
I know how you feel, 'cause like if I can't pinpoint exactly what's going on, it bothers me too. And
Well-
like I said, we've talked about, we have to have a roster that's current, that tells you, if I leave, you replace me, you know exactly what you have in your budget to hire my replacement.
Right.
You know, that's where we wanna go, is down to the benefits. Like if I had family coverage versus somebody else comes in and it's employee-only coverage, you saved money. That's where we are on the county side between our office and the HR office, is down to every department has its own spreadsheet.
And we used a roster, and we built it, we brought everything in. It came out to about 1,408 positions. We found inconsistencies with it from the data that was in there, and so we couldn't 100% feel good about it. But what we were able to do is calculate what the cost would be and compare it to what our budget was, and it was like, well, we're not gonna have enough, you know, if we go with last year's budget. And it wasn't, you know, just medical insurance, which is a $12 million a year expenditure. We were gonna be $400,000 short, based on the plans that everybody had at the time. And so that roster, you know, it's got their current code right now, but it doesn't show, or it doesn't have where they should be. And then when we discover it, we change it on the fly for payroll. Our office makes a journal entry moving them to the correct department, where there's no budget for that position because it's been paid out of there the last couple of years. And so you have to do a budget amendment, either moving it from one department to another or taking it from fund balance if that department was already fully expended.
And I appreciate what you're dealing with and the problems that you've identified. I'm just frustrated on the other side that basically 3 people got paid and nobody knew where it was coming out of. On the instruction or I don't know, whoever. 6 people got paid out of this. And only 3 were funded. And like, I just feel like at some point, like, the conversation maybe should have come back to us, like, hey, we don't have any money to pay for these 3 people, especially when we were paying people during a pandemic not to work. And now we're taking money out of fund balance. Like, to me, those are the issues that did not come to us. We could have discussions about, like Mr. Moore said, about masks and things like that, but that's the day-to-day operations. This is the budget. That was the budget. And we didn't even get those conversations, and we're getting them now. And so I'm faced with, do I approve it and just suck it up this year and just know that it was a hot mess last year and the year before that and the year before that and the year before that and just move on? Or do I say, at some point, I gotta put my foot down and say, we can't operate this way. And that's not fair to y'all, but it's not fair to us either. So, this is tough.
Okay, we're ready for 9151. Regular instruction. Any questions, comments? Mr. Fulbright?
I don't want to be left out of the fun. Doug, looking at these, are the supervisor, director, librarian, 2 lines, is that because of the lack of anticipated, what's the word I'm looking for? Attrition.
No, those were just underfunded. They were just underfunded, and you can see where they had had a surplus in the substitute teachers down there that covers, that overage. The attrition was only teaching positions,
Okay.
only the 116 line item.
How do we, and maybe this gets to what everybody else has been asking, how do we underfund positions that we have?
There's a few ways. First of all is wrong identification of that position being paid out of this line item versus the regular instruction line item. We literally have two line items called instruction. So if you mess up that function code, then you end up paying librarians out of regular instruction and out of here. So you could end up having, you're under budget on the regular instruction, and then you end up coming in over budget on this instruction for the same position. The other side of it would be a position that was hired knowing that you had budget and other line items and expending that and anticipating doing this budget amendment. But like I said at the forefront of the meeting is if a position has not been funded and it is a different position where there isn't funding, you should come to the school board and ask for funding for it, even if you are taking it from another line item, because you've got to move that money or increase that funding.
Okay, let me ask you one other quick question. Define for me what supervisor or director are. What positions are those? You don't have to tell me every one of them, just give me a little overview.
I can tell you the exact position have her drive. It might take a second if that's all right.
I'm just curious as to ballpark, kind of what we're looking at there.
So those would be the instructional supervisors and central office staff that is over instruction. That would be, I don't generally give names, but...
No, I don't expect that.
Could I make a quick statement?
Yeah.
Something that we don't budget for, that does happen throughout the year, and it's another TCA code that we found that we discussed with HR during our training, is educational raises. Educational raises are never budgeted for, so if any of the employees at the district go to grad school or doctorate or something, and that's what happens a lot in higher positions, is those are not budgeted for, and maybe that's another thing that should come back as a budget amendment.
Also, we found when looking at the TCA code that employees are supposed to wait until January 1 of the next year.
January 1st, and then get it the next year, so that it's part of the budget process.
Okay.
Yeah.
That has not been followed yet.
All right, thank you for those clarifications.
Clarify what you just said?
Yep.
We've been paying them before they were supposed to be paid?
So they've been getting paid for the educational increase as soon as they showed proof, but the TCA code says you have to wait until January 1. And so we just discovered it, 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, that was actually, just 2-3 weeks ago, one of our employees, she decided that she was gonna sit down, and since she had some time on her, she went through TCA codes for teachers, for payroll and salary, and, I don't know, she does that for fun. She finds stuff and she emails and she said that I just found a TCA code that states that salary increases are only to be done, as far as educational salary increases goes, they're only supposed to do once a year. And I think the date was January the 1st. Have a deadline in your policy stating, please submit all your paperwork by this date so you can be part of the budget process. And then starting the next school year, you get your raise. I don't know if it said that we have to retro it back or not, but either way we go, and we can forward that, TCA code out, because we discussed it with the HR office the other day, because that's the first time we've seen it, because we do educational increases almost every month.
Can we add that discussion of that with regards to policy in July.
I think I saved it.
I mean, I think the problem is we're trying to produce a budget and things are changing during the year, but why make it harder on ourselves? We hire a teacher in August with a certain degree. If that's the degree that's needed, I don't know that we get the benefit until the next year.
And so what we've been doing is, as we get, oh, I'm sorry, I just started speaking. As we get a person who sends in their documentation, HR usually gives us a form stating, okay, this person may have gotten their master's degree in August, or so-and-so. Well, we got the documentation by the time the teacher gets their transcripts and stuff. If we get it in December, we have to retro it back. And then we've also had, in those payouts, when we had any kind of, incorrect salaries, those we have brought, but any of the educational changes, that's just part of the stuff that when we get a form from HR stating this person completed their master's, bachelor's, or well, most of them already have a doctorate, a PG, we just go ahead and most of them are retro back to the date they earned it. So that's pretty good lump sum of a payout. And lump sum payouts are not budgeted either.
Well,
Those
and
are
not only
items
that,
would
but
usually come up
it
too.
impacts their salary, which then impacts
The budget.
insurance
Oh,
and
yeah.
retirement and
Everything,
everything else that we're
Yeah.
seeing on these budget
Yep.
amendments. We're not just changing one line item.
No, it
And that makes
changes
it
it
even
all.
harder on y'all, because you're not just having to go in
It's hard
and
to
change
estimate.
one, you're having to change, 4 or 5 different other codes that go along with it. I mean,
Social Security, Medicare, TCRS usually.
Shouldn't that have been an audit finding?
Yeah, if we weren't in compliance with the TCA code, and technically that's the year that's about to be audited.
Oh.
But I
we'll
don't
give
know.
them more.
Doug, when we had the meeting with all the teachers at Central, you know, when they were so irate, one of them, and she followed through with emails as well, was concerned because she had gotten a degree but had not gotten it. And my thinking was it was because it hadn't been budgeted, she'd gotten it in the middle of the year, so that's why
I never received that email about it, because HR carries this out. They go check T and Compass, they see that the teacher actually has their teaching license, you know, and how many years experience, and also gets the transcripts. But the thing is we have been giving those educational increases, and all they do is accept the documentation and say, yep, they did it, and then
I can
starts
tell you
next
it's been that
payroll.
way since time, and that's just when, but the idea being, I suppose, that you want them to seek higher degrees. You want them to go and get higher. It's one of the reasons that at that level, at the higher level in our pay, that we're competitive.
Correct,
Once
and
they get up,
I don't know if the teachers are aware of the process
No,
either. So
probably
I
not.
think that's where our problem is when they find out, oh, somebody else in their school got a
Right.
raise. They're like, well, I finished my master's 2 years ago, or a year ago, and then when they bring that paperwork in, then that's when the budget takes a huge hit, because now you're paying a teacher at a higher salary with a 1% or the step raise already in there. You have to budget them going backwards.
well, honestly, I think HR, I think Mr. Lindsay has done his, not having as much education law as others, but I think there's been problems in HR with salary overpayments, people leaving and still being paid, and all that sort of thing. So I don't even know where to put that, but I do think that is something we'll have to look at, and I don't know that that's in policy about that. I don't know that's even in the MOU. I'll just have to look at it and see if it says how that's payout is.
It doesn't have to be in policy for it to be
I
followed when
wouldn't-
it's a TCA code. It's a law.
It is a
that
law,
we-
and that
yeah.
supersedes, right.
Well,
Right.
and I think part of the issue is that, if you have, there's policy and then there's procedure, and, following the law
If the
and,
law
and
is the law.
implementing a procedure, that's the day-to-day operation that we're not really responsible for. I'm just saying, from a policy standpoint, I'm happy for us to put a procedure in place if HR, now that they're aware of this, does not choose to do so and bring it to us and make us aware of it in a timely manner. Because, like what you're saying, Shifra, as far as, somebody saying that they got a doctorate or a master's 2 years ago, and we've already closed that budget out. That impacts this budget, and we don't, no offense, but I'm almost like, you snooze, you lose. I mean, I don't know why we would ever pay them back for 2 years. And to me, we're hiring people based on what their experience is on August 1st. If they get something in the middle, I don't know. I don't know that necessarily makes them a better teacher at that point. Is all I'm gonna say.
I think that it should, if they get their degree in December, that it shouldn't be effective until the next school year, because they're under contract for that year. So if whatever the degree is would be effective toward the next thing. That's just the way it, and I honestly think that's the way it's been, really, but I don't know. This is lots of cleaning up to do here.
Real quick, and that's the reason why it made me think that, because once Doug pulled the roster, I had seen some of those names come through on educational raises already, so when I looked at that, I was like, that's probably why we're over budget in those lines, is we've had a few educational increases in those lines.
Can you leave that document up?
Oh, I thought you, okay, excuse me. I'm gonna move on to 9152, which is, surplus from one item to other salaries and wages to cover instructional program. Any comments on that one? (9153) is, vocational education, took some surplus from 72210 to other salaries and wages to cover a something. Any comments or questions about that one? 9154, adjusting, items to correct the budget for vocational education. Any questions about that one? 9155, adjusting line items to correct budget for special ed. Any question about that? We do have, one of the supervisors here. Okay, moving on, 9156 is, also special ed. Excuse me, Ms. Parker, I'm sorry, you want to back up? Here, wait.
Sorry. Ms. Ventura, how often do you look at your budget? How often are you making adjustments to it?
I look at my budget every time payroll runs, so every 2 weeks. I do a year-to-date, and then every time we have a board meeting, I check my year-to-date with Doug. I also text, email, and call him just about every 2 weeks, just to be sure that my numbers are matching his numbers.
Lisa is on top of it.
I'm a little anal when it comes to this. I'm a little anal when it comes to a lot of things.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to look at it, and Doug, y'all working together as a team on that. I mean, I think that's what's got to happen with this, and there's a trust factor that comes through when you know people are looking at their stuff and they know their stuff. So hopefully other people will follow suit.
And just as an aside, because I think this is pertinent to what you all have been talking about, if you look at my budget amendment 9155, the reason why I'm short in educational assistance is because unbeknownst to those two fine people sitting at the table there with you from our finance department, I'm the only department that has to have subs for my educational assistance. So that's actually sub money, but they would have no way of knowing that because we never sat down as a group to say what's actually in the line item. Like, people would assume by looking at that that's just salary. So when they created the budget, they were like, okay, so these are the salaries that we have, and some of them were incorrect, and some of them were missing, and we had to go through that whole rigmarole. But even then, I have to add more money to that, because that's just an oddity that nobody would know looking at the budget unless you knew what was actually specifically in a line item, if that makes sense. But I think that's pertinent to what you all have been talking about. We don't talk about what's hidden in there.
Thank you. I should have gotten you up here to a mic, but maybe,
I'm loud, you know I got my
yeah,
voice
you're
on.
good, you're good. Excuse me, Mr. Howe.
Doug, just a quick question. How many other supervisors do you deal with, like Lisa, that are in contact with you as much as she is?
I mean, I would say that Eric is on top of it, and Scott Gaines will already have the answer before he comes to you. You know, honestly, it's pretty much everybody. The thing is if there's people that do it more often and are paying attention and are kind of invested into it, and there's people that just want to ask you. And with the people that want to ask me, it's like, well, I mean, pretty much everything you've got is being spent when it comes to personnel. The other line items, you have access to the same software and same budget that I do. If you want to move money around, just let me know. And what we do is we do have meetings when we run payroll. We actually do an adjustment because there's a lot of ever-changing things on the SPED side. You've got people traveling from different schools, and those have to be coded differently. So we do have a couple of special cases with SPED that some other supervisors don't have to deal with because their employees are in one location. And as long as that's running, it's going to be correct every single time. But no, I would say that, you know, when it comes to supervisors, Eric and Lisa are more concerned with their budget as far as meeting with me or contacting me about an issue they see or a funding problem that they see in the horizon. We actually met about savings. I've got documented emails of who responds to the questions I asked of you know, and who doesn't. But yeah, I would say that Eric and Lisa know their budget and check in about it to see where they're at, because they want to know where they're short, where they're going to need some money. And we have always been advised from the state comptroller's office to do budget amendments along the way so that this isn't intimidating, so that it's fixed before we ever come here. And so that's what we try to do, which is why you guys see so many budget amendments every month. But
And I usually
Yeah.
deal with all the title stuff, so Barbara pretty much does what Lisa does every 2 weeks. If she sees anything that needs to be fixed, she sends us a journal entry or a budget amendment every 2 weeks and lets us know. That's Barbara and Scott Gaines, so.
and honestly, we work with anybody, everybody. You know, we set up meetings, we've had meetings, and quite frankly, some people are just better at it than others too.
Yeah.
And you know, there are people that are in charge of budgets that, you know, we've got login records. We can see that somebody hasn't logged in for months, so we know who's paying attention, who's meeting, and all that good stuff.
Okay, moving on, 9157, which is Technology Department, over budget. Any questions, comments? 9158, which is, maybe I should put my glasses on and know what I'm doing here. Over budget for the Board of Education Department. Any questions or comments, Ms. Parker?
This is really more of a broad question for all of this. You know, when we get like information of instruction or operation, we usually have like a memo that kind of explains things. Is there any, I don't want to add that to y'all, but particularly for the departments that are asking for it, just because it's like what Lisa said, that was subpaid, and when I looked at it, I just assumed that was a position that I don't think that, I don't want to create more work for people, but I also feel like we're approving things we don't necessarily like understand what we're approving just because of how things are coded. I'm just throwing that out there as just an observation. You do with it what you will.
Under the detailed explanation, we try our best. If the department head hasn't contacted us kind of about this budget, but we try to, on the actual budget amendment paper, you know, the document that's signed there, that explanation we try to make as detailed as we can. But sometimes, you know, it could be better coming from a department head, possibly. I don't know.
Okay, next is 915, excuse me, I'm sorry. I can never see your light.
Did we not have that conversation not too long ago about providing a more detailed explanation? I thought we did. Is there any expectation, and like I said, I'm still the new guy here on the board, any expectation for the department heads that are requesting budget amendments to be at the meetings to answer questions? I mean, we do that on the county commission side. Did. I would say going forward, and I'd like this to be made known public, that, I think we ought to almost put that as an expectation. I'm gonna start voting against budget amendments if I have any questions that aren't answered, so.
Okay, moving on is 9159, budget for the director of schools. Any questions or comments on that one? 9160, office of principals. 9161. What, did you wanna speak to that?
The 60 is
Yeah.
the principal's line, I mean, we're back to the same place where we just were. At the beginning of the budget year, we should know exactly what the principals, what we should be budgeting. Did someone get an extra degree, or why is it $80,000 difference? Or do you know? You may not.
I mean, the explanation is it was underfunded. You know, when they asked for a certain amount of money in their budget, that's what we put in there in the beginning budget. And we have our roster. We can pull up and see how much it will be, and then advise them. But you know, this is also the projection. So what's built into this, once again, is that projection of next payroll. And so this is all the principals in the entire district. So we're estimating there's a possibility we'll go over 80,000, but we may not go over that full 80,000. We may come in a little less than that, but truly it is underfunded. Yeah.
Do you know if, and I assume we're still doing it this way, the principals are paid by the number of students at that particular school?
Teachers.
Or staff, yes, okay.
But
yes, staff,
usually the teacher formula is based on how
yeah,
many
still,
students you have.
basically, but,
Yeah.
so, in the middle of the year, is that pay going up to the principals? You know, if they gain 2 teachers in the middle of the year, is their salary bumped up?
It's a good question, but their salary is not bumped up because it's based on the contract that's
Yeah,
made
they're
at the
under
beginning of the
contract.
year.
Okay.
But also, teachers being hired for new positions mid-year should also come through this board. They should, anyway.
I had a question, I think I asked a long time ago too, is that we had a couple of principals who, lost staff because of Battle Creek. But they did not, their salaries would stay the same. So I've always questioned that. So this year, it should be reflected of staff. It shouldn't be just grandfathered in for time, you know, and I don't know who did that, but, that's just a question, go ahead.
For this upcoming year, it would be evaluated year over year, based on the number of teachers in the building. So that administrator handbook that is on the website is still being followed, and it's something that Scott and I, and I think the new superintendent need to take a look at all of the handbooks, because there are things that really need to be updated.
Mr. Fulbright.
We're just rolling last year's budget into this year. Does that mean we're gonna be underfunded $80,000 again next year in the principal line item?
So, Chair Kinzer, I was gonna say, can we, this is another one, since we're keeping a rolling list of things we wanna add to the next work session, that wanna add that one as well. Can we have some numbers that look at that, about how that was adjusted at those times? And I'm not trying to pick on just those, that's the most recent change we had that would have had a major impact. I mean, I have a gut feeling of what actually took place is not what we're talking about here.
And I'm not sure it wasn't the same for the assistant principals in those schools either.
Yeah, so we probably need to look at that too.
Yeah. Moving, I don't even know where we are.
One more.
Oh, excuse me, Ms. Parker.
This is just random in here, but what's communication? What's that line item for?
That's usually cell phones.
Okay.
Yep.
So, did we just underfund that, or?
There's no original budget at all for cell phones. Some principals want it, some don't want it. This came up 2 years ago, and, the question was, why do some want it and some don't want it, because it's not in the budget at all, but it's never been in there. It wasn't there last year either.
So we pay for our cell phone for certain principals that do want it, but we have no money budgeted in
Correct.
for it, so now we're budgeting that money in.
It's still same as last year, so I'm guessing we're gonna have a cleanup for it next year too.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah, and again,
So,
this.
let me jump in right here.
Please do.
Let me jump in right here, that's why when administrators make decisions and they don't have the budget, they should be coming here and asking, hey, we've got some principals, they want cell phones. We wanna give them cell phones, but we don't have the budget. Can we allocate some money towards this?
That's it.
And then we wouldn't be sitting here doing what we're doing.
I mean, I don't know how we can write the contract, but I'm almost to the point where I feel like we need to start writing contracts where we're gonna pay you if we have the money. And at this point, I wouldn't be paying for some stuff. And I think maybe some principals and some administrators, I don't know. I'm not taking $200,000 out of fund balance every year just because we have budget meetings. Nobody comes and talks about this stuff. No principals come. No principals really came and told us about what they needed for their school or any of that. And then it's just at the 11th hour, we get a request for $200,000 to be taken out of fund balance. It's really frustrating.
I just wanna say, kinda on behalf of our department, we're just trying to be administrative here, and honestly, the direction and what, people wanna do at the administrative level, we want out of that. We just wanna build the budget, do the admin, do what we're supposed to do, and let you know of the issues that happen budgetarily and between, on our payroll and all that. And I feel like, sometime, a few questions ago, I crossed the line that I shouldn't have, and I apologize for that, so.
I know there are lights on, so I don't know who is next here. I'm gonna let, Mr. Moore.
So, and I just wanna say one thing on this. I'll keep my list and I will email it out, trust me. I think everyone here understands that you guys just happen to be the ones presenting this, that it's the nature of where we are at this moment. So I absolutely, and I'm sure the rest of the board members appreciate getting information here. Some of this is, yeah, it's a lot of work. But I think I wanna say, and this is more for the people watching from home, because there's a huge crowd here. This is one of the things that makes it very difficult, for me personally. This is not about principals. This isn't about trying to make sure principals are making sure, that's not the issue. The issue is we're trying to put together a very large budget here, and if we don't have accurate information and some honest discussion about these things, what seems very small, when we just talk about $2,000 worth of cell phones, but it's happening over and over again in multiple line items, and some of those are much larger. It makes it difficult as a board member for me, and this is something I've said multiple times over the years, it makes me difficult for me to go to the county commission when we say we need more money, when I'm not even able to give an accurate accounting of what we've got already and what I'm spending. And it's been frustrating for me for years, and it's broader than that, but it's very difficult. And it's difficult, again, when we talk about the fact that we have intentionally underfunded last year's budget, and that's why we're cleaning these up. But we just passed another budget doing the same thing. So as someone asked, I'm keeping a running total. We're actually over, I think it's close to $3 million at this point that we're actually under if you look at the numbers. Again, we'll move some things around again, but it's only going to go up on what we're actually under because we're adding staff. We're growing at some of these schools. It's just frustrating again, as a board member, that we're in this position at the 11th hour, having to clean some things up, that frankly, some forethought and some planning that would be going in at the appropriate time of the budget process would resolve a lot of this. And it would make it easier for the public to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. And would make it easier to explain where we are actually at. Again, I'll go back to when we talked about raises for teachers. I don't mind having that discussion, and we can, but when we're already in the hole $2 million, it's hard to have that discussion. And it's hard to explain frankly, to the average teacher, well, this is what we did, and we were shorting the numbers so we could make it fit. And then we're having to come up with not only the hole that we're filling, but the raise on top of that. And they look at me and they're like, what are you talking about? I just want to get paid. I want to get paid what I'm worth. It's hard to have that discussion because we're having to clean up a mess. And I don't mean clean up the budget clean, but it's just, again, another point of, this is frustration night, I guess. This is a point of frustration as a board member, that we can't really get to the meat and potatoes of talking about budgetary problems when we're not talking about these kinds of things that are vitally important to how healthy our revenue is, how healthy our expenses are, or unhealthy they are. And having difficult discussions at the appropriate time, not the last minute, if we need to look at things differently. If we know we're already $2 or $3 million in the hole, we should be having that discussion at the beginning of the budget process. And talking about what that really means for services, for the things we have. Because I think if we talked about that, we wouldn't have been talking about stipends and other things if people really understood we were already in the hole. Can we afford to do those things? And I think to Ms. Parker's point, when we're talking about, and I know it's a small amount in one of those line items, about taking money out of textbooks, $12,000 out of textbooks. I know y'all are just clean up, but functionally I have a huge problem with that too. As much as we've said for the last 3 years, we can't shortchange those things. But yet here we are again doing it.
To kind of move towards that, the accounting for payroll has improved significantly with the catching of errors and some department heads coming forward and working with us and us getting people organized and working with HR. It's come a long way as far as the coding aspect and getting data that you can rely on to make decisions, because y'all are making decisions off of the data, and if you trust that data, you make a decision and the data's wrong, well then you could make a wrong decision as a school board and as a citizen. That you want good decisions to be made in your community. And I think that with a fresh start and with admin working hand in hand with the finance office, that we can tackle a lot of these issues and have a lot of things worked out in a short amount of time. And I think that it's good that we're at least documenting some things that we are going to be short on, because I do anticipate a surplus in which we can reallocate funds if need be, but the school board can make some decisions. So.
And let me just say that in regards to budget, one of my frustrations, having been board chair through 2 budget process with Doug, the first year being the first, this time, principals are called in before anybody else. They have a meeting they have all their laundry list of requests. I never got to see that, and I went to one budget meeting, and everybody was so shocked when I walked in. Doug invited me, and everybody kind of acted different when I was there. Had kind of different information, but I've always had a problem with the fact there's a keys budget. You tell us what you need, laundry list of stuff you need, all of which, make them think that maybe they're going to get it, and they're not. It's just a waste of time, so I've never really understood where any of that is. Did you get anything in your budget? Not a thing. But how much did you have to do? You had to put that document together. You had to meet with the, like court, and tell them that's what it looks like, isn't it? And explain in detail why you need it. And that was for every school, 24 schools, bringing their budget, spending their time with staff, around the table. For what? For what? It was a waste of time. So, do you have needs? Absolutely you do, but there's got to be a better way to address them. That's what I'm saying. And I don't know who's Mr. Beaver.
Thank you, ma'am. Well, for the last 5 years, we've known we had financial problems. You know, we knew that we couldn't trust everything we were being told. And hopefully, come this Wednesday, it's a new day. And I guess my question is how can we, as a board, as a new superintendent, and as a financial department, how can we make sure this don't happen again? That we know that whenever Doug gets information and he tells us that we can carry it to the bank.
I think that, part of it will be, there are some areas in which that you either have to adjust your action or you have to increase budget. Things have been underfunded. You know, the cuts that you consistently, you know, send admin staff to make, you know, okay, we made the cuts, the numbers lower. Well, and I've said this in the past, well, if you made the cut or you cut a program out or you cut a budget out, you know, you cut things out, then that means you have to say no when that vendor comes and says, okay, your contract renewal's ready. Or you have to say no when you don't have enough money to, you know, pay for staff. You know, you have to adjust that to where you come into where the funding level is at. And if you don't, you have to come back here and ask for funding for something that's already in place. So I would say just working with new administration and us working together to see what we have already that either just funding needs to come up or we need to make an action to adjust our expenditure to where we come within budget and we don't have to amend.
But I guess, the HR, you know, you get your information from HR, correct? And if HR is playing games with numbers, or it be by direction or whatever, you know, if we don't make a change somewhere down the line, how are we gonna keep from making these same mistakes?
And that's going to come from experience with our department working with HR, and we've come a long way. That was the whole purpose of that day-long meeting 2 weeks ago, was to go through every single step of the hiring process and get in line of what our process and procedure is. And one of the first steps that people don't talk about is there funding for this position that a department has asked for? Because if there's not, you have to say, hey, I'd love to post that job for you, but the funding's not there. And that's something, even if HR wants to ask us, hey, is there funding for this? We can go in and we can look, and we can work together on that. And that's gotten better since that meeting and since a few procedures we've come up with. And something that we were working on, we've been working towards fixing the leave and other things together. Well, we went back to last year's budget funding, so we got rid of Kronos so that we could get within budget, you know, to save money. We got rid of a lot of the initiatives we were kind of carrying out with, but honestly, we need to work on just keeping our boat from sinking. You know, we need to patch the holes in the boat. You don't buy a new motor for a boat that's got a hole in it. So we're getting better on our processes and procedures and trying to work with that department. That department's had a lot of turnover, but there's people over there that are eager and have improved. And same thing with my payroll department. I've had turnover, and you know, we've gotten good people in their roles, doing their jobs, and you know, get real torn up if they make a mistake, even if it's not even their fault. And we're taking good steps. And I think with a new supervisor over that HR director, I think that'll also help, so.
We can go on, we'll go on through these, but I know that, I mean, we can't correct all this right now, and I know that going forward that you need us to do these budget amendments in order to not have budget findings and to clear it up and hopefully a lot of this money that you had to use from will go back into fund balance, as it did last year. I anticipate it will. Okay. So keeping that in mind, let's just move on. If there are any others, I think we're ready for maintenance of plant. or operations maybe? Yes. 9162. I'm sorry, I didn't look up. Go ahead, Ms. Parker.
On 9161, what was communication and other contracted services for HR, do you know?
The communication's actually, a software item that got paid out of there. ReadySub, that's the sub-software that we've been working on, it got paid out of there, 'cause I looked at that too. I was like, why does HR have $11,000 in communication? So that was something I checked right before the meeting, and that's actually gonna get journal entry out of there. So even though we're putting 11 grand in there, it's gonna be journal entry out of there, 'cause it should have been paid out as software.
Okay.
And then the $399 other contracted services, that is where, they pay for basically any, recruiting, also their Power Schools applicant trackers paid out of there. That's the software that they use to post positions.
So then the ReadySub is actually gonna go out of a different,
It's gonna go out of,
Department.
yeah,
okay.
no, it's gonna go out of this same department, just a different object code.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Different
it's just,
object
it's
code,
not,
okay.
instead of 307, it's 317. It was a typo on the invoice side. So it's gonna be journal entry out of there.
Okay,
And
and
the
then
budget,
for next year, we're not using, are we transitioning from ReadySub to something else?
ReadySub is actually, something new that we got last year that was going to work with Kronos. The
Okay.
good news is we can actually still use that. Something we use right now is Smart Find Express.
Right.
So Smart Find Express is actually more expensive and has less functionality. We've been working with HR on the project, and we've actually got all the subs in there and updating that and trying to use that as a new program. We paid for Smart Find last year through January because we needed people to still be able to operate. But this is actually, $13,000 cheaper per year, so.
Sounds good. With regards to the clerical personnel, I feel like it was just turnover. Okay. I was just like, I thought we needed help in HR as much as possible. How did we save money there?
Oh, excuse me. Moving on, 9162, operations, any questions, comments? 9163, maintenance of plant, questions or comments? 9164, transportation department, questions or comments? 9165, budget for community service department. What is that? Oh, sorry, Ms. Parker, I did look up everything.
You did. No, it's slow loading each time. Going back to 9164, transportation department. We're taking money out of fund balance for this particular one, but I thought we were gonna have a lot of savings with, I thought we've recently purchased vehicles because we were expecting savings. I don't know if it was particularly in this one, but I assume it was in transportation generally. So I'm just curious why we're now having to turn around and take over 200,000 out
When
for fund
Shifra, calculated the savings and we were at the budget meeting talking about it, we had discovered that the savings was gonna be less than our overages. And we reported that at the school board meeting.
and bus drivers are currently getting, even though they're not driving buses, a lot of them have been involved in cleaning buses and getting them ready. So we just actually found out a week or so ago that they're actually gonna get stipends because they're starting to either clean schools or getting some type of work done. That way they can get the buses and stuff ready for the fall. So that was something we didn't know when we were projecting savings either. That they're actually in the process of helping getting things cleaned up and sanitized to be able to run for fall.
And I can't remember what it was that we were purchasing, but I thought we were like purchasing like maintenance vehicles and things like that.
Yes, correct.
With the,
I was thinking some of the savings were diesel and, fuel at that
Okay.
point. And again, this is, going back to estimates. It's a
Right.
3-month, a whole year average split into next,
1
6
month.
weeks or 5 weeks or
Yeah.
so. So like I said, like even if we're putting so much in there, when we get the final numbers in another 30 days, which we will, you'll probably be able to compare these and say, okay, we put 20 grand in there but ended up only using like 10. That's the hope for
Hope.
this.
okay.
The part that's, again, and something else that's part of the MOU is the way we do our contracts. We pay teachers August through July. The contract runs August through May. The whole payroll is pretty much, other than the 12-month employees, everything that we do in July has to be put back into June 30th. So, but cleanup has to be done on June 30th. So we're
Right.
predicting a whole month's worth of activity, and again, covering it to where,
Because payroll line items are the most sensitive. You know, if we go over in a payroll line item, it will
We're
show
done.
up on the audit, and that's why we're ultra conservative there. Sometimes, you know, it looks like a lot of money, like, man, we didn't account for like 40 bus drivers or something like that, but, you know, that, we're being heavily conservative on payroll line item.
these are very out there numbers, like, 'cause I worked with this on our, with our BOE accountant, and I was like, whoa, and she's, I just trying to make sure I don't miss anybody. She missed bus drivers last year, so she was pretty upset about that, but by a very small amount. And she was only here a month at that time, so she didn't even know what was 12-month and 10-month back then, but, just, like I said, like, a lot of these numbers will make so much more sense when we present to you all the actual June 30th numbers, when we have done our journal entries to put all of our July expenditures back.
Okay.
And something else to look in the future, since we're on the topic of discussing future items, is somehow making that contract fit with our fiscal year instead of having to do, 'cause then you actually would get, we wouldn't be giving you estimates, we would be giving you pretty much close to actuals at this point, 'cause we would have ran the payroll for the last payroll for this year 2-3 days ago.
Okay. Well, and I appreciate that. I was just confused on this one, just because I knew that we had heard that we had surplus in that particular one, and then we're taking money out for fund balance,
And
and
estimate-
we're paying bus drivers that we haven't used.
We're paying for cleaning buses, I
Cleaning
found out.
buses.
Cleaning buses and getting them ready.
But we did pay bus drivers during the time that we were shut down too.
Bus drivers got their last pay on May. That's, was it June 15th was the payouts for their contract? Correct.
They get paid out all of their leave. They're treated differently on June 15th than
Okay.
everybody else. They're a use it or lose it type deal with their leave.
They
Okay.
they contracts, the last salary payment is end of May, and then the vacation or sick time payout is June the 15th.
Mr. Fulbright?
So we're paying them to clean the buses. They only need to be cleaned one time, do they not?
Correct, but we also pay them out every year for their full contract. So all the bus drivers that retired or left, so if you're a bus driver and you work for us every year, you will, whatever you accumulate throughout the year for time off, you will get it paid out on June 15th. We don't carry their sick and vacation time, so that's why you see, 'cause we can't estimate how many of them are actually gonna leave or come back or what they're gonna earn. So that's the other part that affects that line too, is their payouts.
Also, when we were talking with the state, when we were organizing who's going to be paid and who's not going to be paid, districts paid their bus drivers even though they weren't driving buses. That's
we did
what,
the same.
that is how it was done across the board.
We pay a lot of people who don't work.
Yeah, we did.
Well, and let me just say, I'm not trying to be critical of that, 'cause I understand this is like unprecedented and all that, but at the same time, I feel like we had essentially 2 months where we really weren't in school, and I don't really feel like we have the savings to show for the education that did not occur during that time. And that's the part that's somewhat concerning, especially when when we know that we underfunded our budget, and we weren't really looking at that, and weren't really having those conversations from staff to the board. Instead, it was, no, we have savings, and we're gonna use these savings, and we can buy vehicles, and we can do those things. And I'm not saying those things are bad, I'm just saying that we really didn't have enough savings to justify those things. And so this comes back to trust. It comes back to when somebody says something, I wanna be able to take it to the bank, and a month later, and I understand things change, and I'm trying to be flexible about it too, but at the same time, I don't know that we really delivered a great product for those 2 months, and we really don't have a lot to show for it, and we don't even have savings to show for it, and that's kinda discouraging. Not your fault.
Can you put the mic back on, please?
That was not your fault, Doug. Sorry.
Okay, I believe we're ready for 9165, which is, we're really, If you remember last year, you were coming in and I said,
You didn't do any budget amendments.
no, and I said, Doug, this is all this fund balance. He says, no, I've got it covered. And then we were out of here quickly. So this is much better to look at all these and understand it. I think it's really important that we do. 9165, any questions or comments? 9166, early childhood. 9167, education department. Any questions or comments? Okay, these budget amendments need to be submitted tomorrow night to the commission, so do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve, second by Mr. Howell. Is there any more discussion about the budget amendments?
Can I make a closing comment?
Yes, please.
I think we are, I know it looks horrible, but personally, we feel a lot better about this year than we did the year before. Just, the turnover is a huge, huge deal. Like Doug said earlier, we had turnover in our office, the district our size, to get over how much payroll needs to be ran, and we run it every 2 weeks, and we have about
3 people.
Yeah, we have 3 people running payroll, but we have like 5 or 6 different things that we do in every payroll. We have board payroll that runs once a month. We have bus driver payroll. We have sub payroll. We have 10-month payroll, 11-month payroll, and 12-month payroll. So just saying, and this is something that the HR, when they get a new employee, has to learn. They have to communicate it over to our office. While everything is still going on, they have to learn all of this, along with the GLs, because we have a huge GL chart, and understand what accounting is before they can even pass everything on to us. So I feel a lot better this year, because we are going into the weeds a little bit. We really hope to be working with the new director and get into the weeds more, because yes, we like to know what we're doing in our office completely as well. And at the county side, like you look at the budget amendments we have on the school side, on the county side, we have 4 or 5 budget amendments this year. I think it was 5.
There's a lot of things in process, like
Yes.
Schiffer's alluding to. You can't do that when there's uncertainty at your superintendent, uncertainty at your assistant superintendent, uncertainty at your HR director. I don't know who's going to be here to help me implement things. You know, and I definitely don't want to spend money on a software that's $180,000 if, you know, we're going to do that. So I'm glad we were able to put the brakes on that. But at the same time, there's policy changes that I was looking at. There's a lot of things that this school board and the financial management board, this superintendent and whoever populates the new HR director position when it gets put out, or whatever the plan is for it. But a lot of things we can get rolling on with some solid ground. So we're excited for the future, and we're always a work in progress. You know, we can always get better.
I almost hate to say this, but I did see Mr. Moore's light on. Okay. If there's no more discussion, excuse me, I can't see your light for some reason. I don't know what it is.
No, I just wanted to ask Doug, how long have you guys had this under your office?
October of 2018 is when I was hired as the director, and then I hired my deputy director in December.
End of December, and then
Yeah.
we transferred, officially we always say first week of March is when we transferred everybody over to our office. So it's been a little bit over a year.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the thing I do want to point out for everybody to remember, is you guys have been trying to come up with systems and frameworks for a year on something that's been out of control for several years. So I think you've got a lot of that in place. We got somebody new coming in who knows what they're getting into. You're not trying to put this on somebody who already had a different way of doing things. So hopefully we can get a little more cohesion between everybody, because it's something that's already in place. We're no longer putting this in place. It's in place, somebody new here is in place, we all know what we want. I think we've got a good vision going forward, so thank you for your work, and I appreciate it.
Yes. Well, then I think we're ready to vote. I think we're ready to vote. I have a motion on the floor in a second, right? So, we're ready to go. I'll just, you want me to call roll or? Ms. Parker? Aye. Ms. Kinzer votes aye. Mr. Fulbright?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Atkinson?
Yes.
Sims?
Yes.
Beaver?
Yes.
He's, you're going out with the rest though, right? Howell?
Yes.
And so that motion does pass. And Doug Schiffer, thank you so much. It means a lot to us that we can call on you. You're always available. I mean, I've always been able to get you, that he'll answer it. It really means a lot. So, I think that we've got a good, something to start on to try to work, get some transparency and trust in that office, so. All right, thanks. Motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye, but don't leave. Okay, don't leave.
Doug,
This-
you don't get defensive when we ask questions. Thank you. That's going back to the county days, too.